Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video we're talking about PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Game Boy, and more. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off here talking about PlayStation 3 emulation on PC with RPCS3. If you're a fan of Midnight Club, you're going to like this update. Build number 0.0.24-14350. What a mouthful. Fixes RSX clear color for formats with less than 32-bit width. Basically, this is the before on the left, and on the right is the after. Here are the images zoomed in so it's a little bit easier to see, and this is at night. If you take a look at the streets, they're a little bit dark and covered in shadow. This is what they should look like, and this is what they look like now. Now, picking up the latest version of RPCS3 is really simple and straightforward. Head to rpcs3.net, click on download. And then once you are here, scroll down and pick it up for your system of choice, Windows, Linux, or Mac. If you're not impressed with PS3 emulation, you might be impressed with this next one. We're talking about PS4 emulation with FPPS4. And we've got a very juicy progress update. While it's no secret that FPPS4 is still in extremely early stages of development, progress is still being made. As of this video, there are 24 games compatible with FPPS4, and there's also 12 homebrew games compatible. I'll leave a link to the compatibility list in the description below in the event that you do want to check it out. There are no AAA games here yet. If you are even just a little bit curious to see these games up and running, I'll leave a link to Brutal Sam's YouTube video in the description below. They test out a whole bunch of games. Next up, we're talking about Game Boy emulation on Windows and Mac with SameBoy, and SameBoy version 0.15.7 just released with a bunch of bug fixes, some accuracy improvements, and some new features. As always, I will leave a link to the changelog in the description below in the event that you do want to read more into it. At a high level here, if you're on Mac, you're going to like this update. SameBoy is now properly categorized as a game app within Launchpad. On top of that, and this one applies to both Windows and Mac, Joy-Cons are now fully supported in the Coco front end. You can also combine and separate Joy-Cons and switch their orientation from horizontal to vertical. And yes, SameBoy is free. It's open source, and if you wanted to check it out, there's no harm in trying it. Next up, this is a quick one. We're talking about w.i.n.e, which stands for Windows is not an emulator, or subscribe to Mr. Sujano, depending on how you want to interpret that one. w.i.n.e version 7.20 was just released. It's not a huge update, but at the same time, if you're using this on Linux or I guess even on Mac or just using w.i.n.e in general, you might want to update to this version. We've got some bug fixes, a number of fixes for exception unwinding, font linking improvements, and the mono engine has been updated to version 7.40. Now, if you're a big fan of Java-based emulators, you might be a big fan of Emulicious. Emulicious is a Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Sega Master System, Sega Game Gear, MSX, and MSX2 emulator. And it just got a brand new update. So this update really isn't that earth-shattering, but we've got some bug fixes, some improvements, and those are always good things. And it now ships with the 64-bit version of Java. So over on the downloads page, if you've never used Emulicious before on a Windows PC, you can pick up the 64-bit or 32-bit versions and make your install a heck of a lot easier. Emulicious is compatible with pretty much anything that runs Java. Next up, we're talking about N64 emulation on PC with M64P, or Simple64. If you remember a while back, M64P changed their name to Simple64 to avoid all sorts of confusion with Mupen 64 Plus. And they've just got a brand new update. This update isn't big, but the emulator does have a brand new main icon, and there's also a pro tip here for performance. So if you're having performance issues with Simple64, head to Settings, click on Core and Video Settings. Click on the second tab here, scroll down to where you see Synchronous RDP, and just uncheck it. Now, some games do require that option, so it might break certain games, but it should hopefully increase your FPS overall. Next up, we're talking about Nintendo DS emulation on Android with MelonDS, and it appears that MelonDS is gearing up for much better DSi emulation. Over on the MelonDS Android GitHub page, which I will leave a link to in the description below, you can click on the Actions tab and see the latest two actions here have to deal with DSi. Retry DSi NAND loading after configuring DSi BIOS from DSiWare Manager, and add home shortcuts for DS and DSi firmware. If you wanted to download and test out one of those builds, you absolutely can, but you do need a GitHub account in order to click on the link and download the file. I'm expecting huge things from MelonDS on Android. At least I'm hopeful here, and this is good news moving forward for the emulator. Last up, we're talking about RetroArch, and it appears that the future of the Netplay feature may or may not be in jeopardy, but we've got conflicting reports. Today there was an incredibly interesting post over on Reddit Emulation. I'll leave a link to it in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. Read it and form your own opinions about it. But apparently Cthulhu here, who was the main developer working on the Netplay feature, is no longer with the project. Now in this post, Cthulhu explains in detail why they left RetroArch, and they even provided some screenshots. At a really high level, and also putting it nicely, it appears there was a pretty big personality difference between Cthulhu and w.i.n.e. w.i.n.e. is the person calling the shots over at RetroArch. After that, Cthulhu goes on to say that basically the Netplay functionality in RetroArch is going to take a big dump considering they're no longer working on it. Mind you, that's just one side of the story, and if we've learned anything at all recently, like this whole Bayonetta 3 kerfuffle, listen to both sides of the story first before making your final judgment. And LabRetro did respond to this, kind of, just to a tweet here from Retro Game Core about this exact story. And LabRetro is RetroArch for those who are unaware. They said there is no Netplay regression in the current nightly or in the next upcoming stable this week. This is simply disinformation. Now it is worth pointing out, and I want to be clear on this, I'm not saying believe RetroArch and I'm not saying believe Cthulhu. I'm saying read up on the information and make your own opinions. I'm not trying to sway anyone one way or the other. I'm presenting the news in an unbiased fashion as best as I can. But I will say this, part of the proof will be in the pudding. If the Netplay feature for RetroArch goes down the toilet, well, that will speak volumes, and I'm going to be paying close attention to it. And the second thing here, regardless of the Netplay situation, a very similar situation happened earlier this year, if you remember Stenzek and DuckStation. So this is not a good look for RetroArch at all. So to end things on a more positive note, I'm going to give away a lifetime license to Launchbox, and it'll be for either Windows or Android, completely the winner's choice. To enter is simple and straightforward. Send an email to launchboxgiveaway@mrsujano.com with the answer to this question. How many games are working with RPCS4? Send the correct answer along with your name and what version of the lifetime license you want, either Windows or Android, to launchboxgiveaway@mrsujano.com. I'll be choosing a winner at complete random within the next 24 hours or so. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a ton today, and I've still got a lot left on the docket to talk about tomorrow. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.